Parents kicked me out after I donated my kidney to save my golden child brother. Years later, they showed up homeless, begging to stay with me. I had other plans. It sounds like the setup to some dramatic tale, doesn't it? But it's my reality, my life. The whole thing has been a slow burn of resentment, but this was the moment I realized that everything I'd given, everything I'd sacrificed, never mattered to them. I'm Cameron. 31 years old, the older of 2 sons. I should have been the one to get the praise, right? The one who worked hard, got good grades, played by the rules. But no. From the start, it was always Nathan who had all the attention. Nathan, the younger one, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I can still remember the first time I realized the divide between us. I brought home a report card with all A's and 1 B+. I thought it was a pretty good achievement, considering I worked my butt off. But when I showed it to Dad, his eyes barely even left the TV screen. Good effort, he muttered. And then he went right back to watching Nathan's Little League practice footage for the 3rd time that week. Nathan. He'd bring home straight C's, sometimes D's, and they'd act like he just won the Nobel Prize. His trying so hard, Mom would say, wiping away a pretend tear. Let's go to his favorite restaurant to celebrate. It wasn't just that one moment. It was everything. It was the curfew, mine was always at 9, strict, unyielding like a sentence. Nathan, on the other hand, rolled in at midnight at 15, and they'd just ask if he had fun. I worked weekends at the hardware store to pay for my car insurance. Nathan. He got a brand new Honda Civic for his 16th birthday, fully paid, with insurance. I remember that summer, saving up for months to buy myself a used PlayStation. I skipped lunches at school, cut back on everything I could. When I finally bought it, Nathan threw a tantrum because he wanted one too. 2 days later, Mom came home with a brand new PlayStation for him, complete with 5 games I could never afford. When I brought up the unfairness of it all, Dad hit me with the classic line, "Life isn't fair, son. Better you learn that now." It was like he had to remind me, constantly, that I didn't matter as much as Nathan. That pattern never stopped. And every time I called out the inequality, the response was the same. You're being selfish, just be grateful for what you've got. But I wasn't. I wasn't grateful. Not when I worked my tail off for everything, while Nathan got a free ride through life. It started to feel like I was invisible, like no matter how much I gave, no matter how hard I worked, I would always be the second choice. It's something you get used to over time. But it still stings, doesn't it? The constant reminder that you're not the priority. That you're just there to fill in the gaps, to support the real star. And then, one day, it all boiled over. It was my turn to finally do something that mattered. Nathan was sick, deadly sick. He was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. Both his kidneys were failing, he needed a transplant, and he needed it fast. My parents sat me down and explained how important it was that I donate. They told me, "This is your chance to really contribute to the family." It took everything in me not to scream, "What the hell have I been doing all these years then?" But I didn't. I didn't because, despite all the neglect, I still loved my brother. He was my brother, and I thought maybe, just maybe, this would finally make them see me. Maybe this would finally be the thing that proved I wasn't just the sidekick in Nathan's story. I agreed. I donated my kidney. The surgery was brutal. The recovery was worse. I was in the hospital for 4 days, barely able to move without pain shooting through my side. And my parents. They came by once to check on me, but their focus was always on Nathan, who was 2 floors up. When I asked for some company, my mom said they needed to get back to Nathan. He was having trouble adjusting to his meds. I spent 2 weeks on a couch because Nathan got the master bedroom. My room had been converted into a home office. But it wasn't about the room, was it? It wasn't about the space or the comfort. It was about them showing me, once again, that I didn't matter. 2 weeks after the surgery, when I was still in pain, still healing, my mom asked me if I could start looking for my own place. Nathan needed long-term care, she explained. I could tell she was trying to make it sound reasonable. But it didn't change the fact that they were kicking me out, while I was still recovering from giving up an organ to save their golden child. They offered me $500 toward moving expenses. $500. The kidney I gave Nathan could have been worth $250,000 on the transplant list. And they gave me $500 to get out. That night, I packed my things. I moved into a tiny studio across town. 4th floor, walk up, no elevator. Every step up those stairs felt like someone was stabbing me in the side. But I didn't care. Not anymore. I was done being their backup plan. So, there I was, a week after surgery, lying on an air mattress in a room that smelled like the previous tenant's cat. I had a piece of me in my brother's body, but he never once said thank you. Neither did my parents. I wish I could say that was the last straw, but it wasn't. The real breaking point would come later. Much later. Nathan was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease when he was 25. It started as an annoyance, a few too many doctor visits and tests, but it quickly turned serious. Both of his kidneys were failing. The doctors said he needed a transplant soon, or he'd be on dialysis indefinitely. The news hit hard, but not just because Nathan was sick. It hit because I knew, deep down, I was the one who was supposed to help him. Mom and Dad sat me down a few days later. They told me it was urgent. Nathan was a match, but they couldn't find a donor. That's when they asked me. It wasn't a question of whether I would help, it was more of a statement. "You're our only option," Mom said, her voice trembling. "We need you to do this for your brother." I felt like I was walking in a dream. The idea of giving Nathan a kidney was big. It was huge. But my brain couldn't make sense of it. Here I was, the responsible one, the one who always did the right thing, and somehow, this felt like the ultimate test. Maybe this would finally show my parents that I wasn't just the backup. Maybe this could change everything. Or maybe it wouldn't. They told me that I was a perfect match. A miracle, they said. The doctor explained that my kidney could save Nathan's life, that it would give him a second chance. I should have felt proud to be the one to do it. Right. But instead, it felt like I was trapped. Like I was being asked to fix something that wasn't just physical. It wasn't just about the kidney. It was about all the years I had spent invisible, overlooked, constantly giving without receiving anything in return. I agreed to donate. They scheduled the surgery for 2 months out, but even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just a tool. A piece of the puzzle to keep Nathan alive. My parents were obsessed with making sure Nathan was healthy enough for the transplant. They fussed over him, talked about his diet, his medications, his sleep schedule. But me, I was just the donor. Nobody asked how I felt about the whole thing. Nobody seemed to care. The months leading up to the surgery were a blur of doctor's appointments and tests. I had to undergo pre-op screenings, psychological evaluations, and all the other hoops you have to jump through when you're donating an organ. I'd had minor surgeries before, but nothing like this. This was serious. This was my body being altered for good, giving up a piece of me that I could never get back. I wasn't just doing this for my brother. I was doing it for my family, for the people who had never once made me feel like I mattered. I kept thinking that maybe this would be the thing that changed everything. But it didn't, not even close. When the day of the surgery came, I was nervous. Hell, I was terrified. But I pushed through it because I wanted to believe that it would make a difference. That after this, maybe my parents would finally see me. Maybe they'd see how much I'd given up for them, for Nathan. Maybe they'd acknowledge it. Maybe they'd even say thank you. The surgery itself went fine. The transplant was successful. Nathan recovered quickly, and as soon as he could, he was back on his feet. The recovery for me though, it was brutal. I was in the hospital for 4 days. The pain was something I never expected. It felt like being stabbed every time I moved. I remember lying in that hospital bed, trying to sleep, but all I could hear were the machines beeping around me. And then there were my parents, hovering over Nathan, talking about his recovery, asking him if he needed anything, offering him whatever he wanted. When they did stop by to see me, it was quick, brief. I couldn't even get a full sentence out before they were off to check on Nathan again. "Let me know if you need anything," Mom said one time, barely glancing at me as she rushed out the door. But Nathan got the attention. Nathan got the room with the fancy bed, the TV, the special dietary foods. My old room, the one I grew up in, was now an office. My space was gone, and nobody seemed to care that I was still recovering. When I finally got home, still in pain, I was told to sleep on the couch for a few weeks because they needed to make the guest room comfortable for Nathan. So, there I was, still healing. Lying on a couch in a living room that used to feel like home. Meanwhile, Nathan was sleeping in my old room with a memory foam mattress, his favorite snacks and his own private bathroom. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was hurt. A week later, my parents sat me down. Mom told me they needed me to move out. Nathan needed the room for his recovery, she explained. He was going to need long-term care and monitoring, so it would be easier for everyone if I could find a place to stay. I remember sitting there, staring at her, trying to process what she was saying. My parents, who had always been the ones to tell me to be responsible, to take care of my brother, were asking me to leave. 2 weeks after I had donated my kidney. "We'll help you with the move," Dad said. "We can give you $500 for the expenses." $500? For a kidney? $500 for what I had given up. I tried to hold it together. I wanted to scream, to yell, but I didn't. Instead, I packed my things, still in pain from the surgery, still in shock. I packed up what little I had left. They gave me $500, and I used it for first month's rent on a tiny studio apartment. It was on the 4th floor of an old building. No elevator. Every step up those stairs felt like someone was digging into my side. The apartment was small, dark, and smelled like the previous tenant's cat. But it was mine. No one could take it away from me. No one could tell me I didn't belong there. Not anymore. I lay there on the air mattress, staring at the ceiling. 2 weeks ago, I had been in a hospital bed, recovering from surgery. Now I was in a tiny apartment, with nothing but an old mattress and a broken heart. And no one seemed to care. I was barely settled into my new life when the call came. It was Mom. She was frantic, talking faster than usual, her voice tight with anxiety. "Cameron, we need you to come home. Nathan's been having complications. He's not doing well. His recovery is stalling, and we don't know what to do." I remember staring at the phone, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. There it was again, the call for help. The call that, in some way, had been coming for years. My family was once again relying on me. I felt a sick twist in my gut, but I couldn't bring myself to respond right away. Instead I just let her ramble, knowing that this was coming. That feeling of being their backup, their emergency plan, was so familiar by now. But even then, I didn't know how far they'd go this time. "Cameron, please," she said. "He needs you, you're his only match. The transplant, it's not enough. He needs more care. We're doing everything we can, but we need you here. He's your brother. You owe him this. Owe him this." The words hit me like a slap. I tried to keep calm, but the anger bubbled up again. They had never seen what I gave. They never acknowledged the sacrifice I'd made. I had literally given Nathan a piece of myself, and here they were, asking me for more. More of my time. More of my energy. More of me. I asked, "What exactly do you want from me, Mom?" She paused, and I could hear the frustration in her voice, as she tried to collect herself. "We need you to help him, Cameron. We're running out of options." I could feel the tension rising, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about a kidney anymore. This was about something deeper. Something that had been eating away at me for years. This was about them never seeing me. Never appreciating me. And now, when everything had fallen apart for them, they were calling on me again. The one who was always expected to just step in, clean up the mess, and keep going as if nothing ever happened. I was furious, but I wasn't sure why I was so angry. Was it the fact that they had asked me to give up something that would change my life forever, and they didn't even thank me for it? Was it the constant imbalance of effort and affection, where Nathan was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the afterthought? Or was it just the weight of all the years I had spent in the shadows of my family's expectations, always giving and never receiving? I told her I would think about it, but deep down, I knew what the answer was. The truth was, I didn't owe them anything. I had already given more than enough. Over the next few days, the phone calls kept coming. They were desperate now. Mom, Dad, Nathan, all of them, trying to pull me back into their orbit. They had already started to make excuses for Nathan's condition, blaming the complications, blaming the transplant, blaming anything they could to avoid facing the real issue. They hadn't learned anything from what I'd done for them. They hadn't learned the true cost of my sacrifice. I tried to ignore them. I really did. I didn't want to go back to being that person, the one who did everything for everyone else, without ever asking for anything in return. But my phone rang again. It was Dad this time. "We really need you, Cameron," he said, his voice low. I could hear the desperation in his tone, and something in me softened, just for a second. "We're losing everything. We can't do this without you." I shook my head, frustrated with myself for even considering it. "You never asked me if I needed anything. You never asked me how I was doing when I was in the hospital, recovering from surgery. You kicked me out of the house while I was still healing. Now you want my help." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Dad finally spoke, it was in a voice I hadn't heard from him in years, genuine, vulnerable, almost pleading. "I don't know what else to say, son. We need you. We messed up, but we're your family. You're the only one who can help." That was the moment I realized how deeply entrenched I was in this cycle. I had always been the one they relied on. Always the one who did what was asked of me, without question, without hesitation. And every time, it was the same. I gave everything and got nothing in return. My whole life, I had been carrying this burden. And for what? To keep going, to keep showing up for people who never really saw me. I wanted to help. I really did. I wanted to be the person who could save Nathan, who could make everything right again. But I knew that if I gave in this time, if I let them back in, it would be the same as always. They would never change. They would never see me for who I truly was. And I wasn't sure I could live with that anymore. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, the words coming out harder than I expected. "I can't help you. Not this time." I hung up the phone before he could say anything else, before the guilt could take over. I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, trying to convince myself that I had done the right thing. I wasn't sure I believed it, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I had to do what was best for me. The phone stayed silent for days. My parents, Nathan, they all stopped calling. But I wasn't free of them. Not yet. I was still haunted by the weight of my decision, by the constant nagging thought that maybe I had made the wrong choice. But deep down, I knew I had done what was best for me. It was the first step in letting go of them. And it felt like the hardest thing I had ever done. 6 years went by. 6 years of no contact, no calls, no visits. And honestly, I had never felt freer. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when my family would come asking for something. I wasn't waiting for them to appreciate me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be someone I wasn't for the sake of others. It was just me. And I was fine with that. I focused on my work, which was starting to pay off in ways I hadn't expected. I had earned a few promotions, and while it wasn't glamorous work, I was good at it. Database management for a healthcare company. It wasn't where I'd imagined myself, but it paid the bills. It gave me the freedom to live my life without constantly looking for validation from people who had never given me any. I spent my weekends with people who cared about me. Dave from work had become one of my closest friends. Every Friday we grabbed lunch, tried new places around town, and just talked about life. Sometimes we'd meet up with his wife, and we'd all hang out, laughing about the most ridiculous things. It was easy. It was real. On weekends, I would explore the city, finding new coffee shops or walking around the parks, just taking in the air and the sunshine. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to do anything to prove myself. I wasn't going to be the person who fixed everyone's problems anymore. I started dating too. It wasn't anything serious at first, just casual. But I met a woman who made me laugh, someone who understood me in a way that I had never been understood before. Her name was Claire. We went on dates, had long conversations over dinner, and just enjoyed each other's company. It felt right, but it also felt strange because, for so long I had been used to the weight of my family's expectations. To not have that hanging over me was freeing. I remember the first holiday I spent with my new friends. It was Thanksgiving, and Dave and his wife invited me over. They had a small gathering, just a few close friends. I brought a homemade pie, a recipe I had perfected the year before. It felt different, like I was finally in a place where I was seen for who I was, not for what I could give. It was warm in their house, and we laughed and talked for hours, just enjoying the simple act of being together. I had never had a Thanksgiving like that, not with my family, at least. And then, one day, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. I let it go to voicemail. And then Dad called. And then Nathan, all within minutes of each other. Something was wrong, I could feel it. I listened to Mom's voicemail. Her voice was different, smaller, scared. "Sweetheart, I know it's been a long time, but we really need to talk to you. And please call back." I froze. My first instinct was to ignore it. I didn't owe them anything, not anymore, but I couldn't help myself. I called her back. "Cameron, we're in a bad spot," she said, her voice shaky. "We really need you. Nathan's not doing well, and we've hit hard times. We made some bad investments. We're going to lose the house. She trailed off, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. I leaned back in my chair, feeling my stomach twist. This wasn't about Nathan being sick anymore. This was about them needing something from me again. They were in trouble, and now they needed me to fix it. And part of me, just a small part, wanted to say yes. Wanted to help them, because that's what family does, right? They help each other. But it wasn't that simple. It had never been that simple with them. "What do you need, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, trying not to let the emotion get the better of me. "We were hoping. Maybe you could help us out," she said. "Maybe you could let us stay with you. Just for a little while, until we get back on our feet. It's just temporary. We've tried everything, but we're running out of options." I sat there for a long time. The weight of the request hanging in the air. I thought about everything I had been through. Everything I had sacrificed. I thought about how they had tossed me out of their house when I was still healing. How they had never acknowledged what I had done for Nathan. How they had never seen me for who I was. How they had treated me like I was disposable. And now, years later, they were asking me to take them in. To help them when they had never helped me. I could feel my anger building again. Not just at them, but at myself. For even considering it. For even letting them have this kind of power over me. I'd worked so hard to build a life without them, to live on my own terms. And now they wanted me to reopen that door. "I'll think about it," I said. Even though I already knew my answer, I wasn't gonna let them back in. Not like this. Not after everything. They called again. And again. I let the calls go to voicemail. Mom, Dad, Nathan, each of them left desperate messages, trying to plead their case. "We're really struggling, Cam. Please, we need you," Dad's voice said in one of the messages. Nathan, too, was calling, his tone flat and emotionless. "It's bad. We don't have anywhere else to go. Please." It felt like they were wearing me down, bit by bit. But I didn't give in. I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. I blocked their numbers. It felt like a weight lifted from my shoulders. But at the same time, a small part of me felt guilty. It was the part that still hoped deep down that one day they'd see me. See what I had done. See how much I had sacrificed for them. But that day wasn't today. Today I was done. Today I was choosing me. The phone calls kept coming. Day after day, I'd see the same numbers flashing on my screen: Mom, Dad, Nathan. Each call seemed more desperate than the last. I didn't answer them. Not once. I had made my decision. I had told myself I wouldn't let them back in. Not after everything that had happened. Not after all the years I had given. And all I had gotten in return was silence, neglect, and dismissal. But even though I blocked their numbers, the weight of their requests still hung over me. It was like they knew exactly how to reach me, how to tug at the old wounds I had worked so hard to bury. Every message, every voicemail, felt like a pull back into that world, where I had to be the one who fixed everything for them. And even though I knew better, even though I'd made my decision, I couldn't stop wondering if I was doing the right thing. It wasn't like I wanted them to suffer. It wasn't like I wanted Nathan to fail or my parents to lose everything. But I had been the one who always took the hit. I had been the one who had to pay the price for their choices. The sacrifice was always mine, the burden always mine to bear, and now they wanted more. They always wanted more. One afternoon, about a week after I had cut them off, I was sitting in my apartment, going through some work emails, when the phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number, but something made me hesitate before hitting the reject button. I answered it. Cameron. It was Dad's voice. He sounded tired, defeated. I could hear the strain in his voice, and for a moment, it almost made me waver. We really need to talk. It's bad. We're in trouble, son. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I knew what he was about to say. They were asking for help again. They had no other options. They needed me to step in and fix things like always. I had lived this story too many times to let it catch me off guard now. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, you've been through this before. You've had all the chances in the world to change things. I'm not doing this again. He paused, and I could feel the distance between us growing. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. Please, he said finally, his voice breaking. We can't make it without you. I know we've made mistakes, but Nathan's getting worse. Each not taking care of himself. And we're losing everything. You're our only hope. The words hit me like a punch. It wasn't just about Nathan anymore. It was about their lives unraveling, their entire world falling apart. But it wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't my fault they had made the choices they had. They had taken me for granted for so long, and now they wanted me to fix everything for them. I wasn't going to do it. Not again. I'm sorry, Dad, I said, my voice firm now. I'm not the answer to your problems. You need to figure this out on your own. You're adults. You've made your choices, and now you have to live with them. He was quiet for a long time. So quiet I almost thought he'd hung up. Then he spoke, his voice small and defeated. I don't know how to fix this, Cameron. We don't know what else to do. I felt my anger flare again. How had they gotten this far? How had they let things spiral to this point? I had spent my entire life trying to fix things for them, and every time, I was left feeling like I was the one who didn't matter. Now, when the tables were turned, they were asking me to come in and clean up their mess. It didn't feel right. I can't help you. I said the words harder than I meant them to be. I won't. You have to figure this out yourselves. I'm done being the person who always picks up the pieces for you. There was another long silence, and I could almost hear the weight of his disappointment on the other end. But I didn't back down. I couldn't. Okay, Dad said quietly. Okay, I understand, but if you change your mind. I didn't respond. Instead, I ended the call. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made the wrong choice. Was it too harsh? Was I being too cold? My gut told me no. But part of me, the part that still wanted to be the good son, the good brother, kept second-guessing myself. Maybe if I helped them now, things would be different. Maybe if I just opened that door a crack, things would change. But I couldn't. I had given everything to them before, and they hadn't seen it, they hadn't appreciated it. And I couldn't live my life constantly looking for validation that I would never get. I was tired of being the one who had to sacrifice for them. Tired of being invisible when it mattered most. The next few days were quiet. No more calls, no more messages. Part of me felt relieved. The other part felt empty. I had finally made my choice, but it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. There was no victory in it. Just a deep sense of finality. And as much as I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing, there was still that small part of me that hoped they would see what they had lost. Then, one evening, a message came through on my phone. It was Nathan. For the first time in years, he had reached out. I know you're angry. The message started, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I never thanked you properly for what you did for me. You saved my life and I never appreciated it. I was wrong. I get that now. I don't expect you to help us, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing. Nathan's apology was unexpected, but it didn't change everything. It didn't undo the years of neglect, the years of being treated like I didn't matter, and it certainly didn't erase what had happened. I typed a reply, slow and deliberate. Thank you for saying that. I wrote. But I've made my decision. I'm done. I hope you figure your life out, and I hope you take better care of the next kidney. I hit send, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to keep fighting. I had made my peace, even if it was a painful one. And in that moment, I finally felt free. 2 days after I'd sent Nathan that message, the doorbell rang. It was early in the morning, just after sunrise. My apartment was still dim, the soft light from the street lamps outside filtering through the blinds. I groggily rubbed my eyes and stumbled to the door, trying to shake off the feeling that something was off. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I certainly wasn't expecting to see what I saw when I opened the door. There, standing in front of me, was my mother, father, and Nathan. They were carrying suitcases, looking desperate and lost. It was like some cruel joke, the scene in front of me. They had shown up at my door after all these years. After everything that had happened, asking for a place to stay. They were homeless, they said. They had nowhere else to go. Mom said, her voice trembling. We need to talk. Please, we're out of options. I stood frozen in the doorway, not knowing what to say. I couldn't make sense of it. How had we gone from not speaking at all to this? How had they come to this point? After everything they had put me through, after throwing me out while I was still recovering from surgery, now they were standing in front of me, asking for help. The same people who had never once truly seen me, who had always put Nathan first, were now looking to me for a favor. Nathan, standing behind Mom and Dad, barely looked up at me. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale, and he looked defeated. There was no apology, no recognition of the past, just a tired, empty expression, and I wondered if, after everything, he understood. Was he finally seeing what he had taken for granted all those years? What are you doing here? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. You know I can't help you. Not after everything. Dad stepped forward, his voice a little too forceful. We have no choice, Cameron. You're our son. You have to help us. We're about to be on the street. You can't just turn us away. I stared at him, struggling to keep my emotions in check. He looked older than I remembered, worn down by time and regret. But I didn't feel the sympathy I thought I would. I didn't feel the urge to rush in and fix it, to play the role of the son who always comes to the rescue. I wasn't that person anymore. You really think I'm just supposed to let you back in? I asked. After everything, Nathan shifted uncomfortably, his voice barely above a whisper. Simon, man, we're family. You can't just leave us out here. I took a deep breath. I didn't leave you out here. You've left me out here. You've left me alone for years, and now you expect me to just open the door and let you all in. Mom's eyes were glossy with tears. Please, Cameron. Please. We don't have anywhere else to go. We need you now. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to say something else. Something that would let them know how much I was hurting, how much I resented them for what they had done, but the words wouldn't come. Instead I stood there, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. No, I said firmly. I'm not doing this again. You kicked me out when I needed you the most. I gave you everything, and you treated me like I was nothing. I'm done. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences. They were silent. Mom wiped her eyes, but there was no apology, no realization that maybe they had gone too far. I could feel the anger rising in me again, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, about setting boundaries and protecting myself. Dad's face reddened, and his voice shook as he tried to reason with me. You're really going to let your family be homeless? You're going to turn your back on us like this? I wanted to scream at him, to tell him everything I had been holding in for all those years. How it had felt to be ignored, to be the one who always had to clean up their mess. But instead, I just shook my head. No, I repeated, quieter this time. I'm not going to be your backup plan anymore. You're on your own. Nathan's eyes flickered with something like regret. But it was too little, too late. He had never said thank you. He had never truly acknowledged the sacrifice I made. I couldn't be the person who just kept giving, hoping that one day things would change. Because they wouldn't. They never would. I stepped back from the door, closing it slowly. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see them standing there, pleading with me, because I knew if I did, I might cave. And I wasn't going to do that, not this. As I'd the door, I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of their footsteps fading away. I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Relief, anger, guilt, a mixture of all three probably. But deep down, I knew I had made the right decision. I had finally let go of the people who had never seen me for who I was. The phone didn't ring after that. No more messages, no more calls. For the first time, I was at peace. I had done what I needed to do. I had finally broken free from the past. And it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But the silence was heavy. And even though I had made my choice, I still couldn't help wondering if they would ever understand. Would they ever see what they had lost? Or would they keep going through life, never realizing the damage they had done? I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to know. I was moving on. And I was going to be just fine. Days passed, and the phone calls stopped. No more texts, no more voicemails. The silence settled in like a heavy fog, thick and suffocating. Part of me felt relieved. But there was always that nagging feeling at the back of my mind. Had I done the right thing? Was I really justified in cutting them off? In refusing to help them when they were on the brink of losing everything? It wasn't like I wanted them to suffer. I wasn't cold-hearted. I just couldn't keep playing the role of the fixer. Every time they needed something, I was the one who stepped up, the one who sacrificed. But when I needed them, when I was hurting, I was invisible. I had spent my whole life trying to be what they wanted me to be, but I was done with that. I was tired of being the invisible one. The one who only mattered when they needed something fixed. The quiet was a blessing, but it also made me feel like I was standing on the edge of something. I wasn't sure if I was moving forward or just standing still, frozen in place. I had cut them out, yes, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a hole, a gap that I couldn't fill. No matter how much I tried. I thought about them, of course. I thought about everything that had happened. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was still angry. I was angry at them for all the years of neglect, for taking me for granted, for making me feel like I was never enough. I was angry that they never saw me for who I really was, only for what I could do for them. But as much as I was angry at them, I was angry at myself too. Why had I kept letting them back in? Why had I let them treat me like this for so long? Why had I never stood up for myself before? I wasn't sure how to answer those questions, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being that person. I wasn't going to let my family continue to treat me like a second-class citizen. I wasn't going to be the one who always gave, always sacrificed, and never got anything in return. I had to let go of the past. I had to let go of the idea that one day, they would finally see me, finally appreciate me. Because I knew, deep down, that they never would. It wasn't easy. Letting go never is. But I had come to a point where I realized I couldn't keep waiting for something that would never happen. I had given them years of my life, years of my love and sacrifice, and all they had given me in return was more disappointment, more neglect. I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang. It was Nathan. I almost didn't answer. I didn't want to get sucked back into it. I didn't want to hear his voice, his hollow apology. But for some reason I picked up. "Cameron," he said, his voice raspy, tired. "I know you're angry. I know I screwed up. I should have thanked you a long time ago. I never did and I'm sorry. But Mom and Dad, they're really struggling, they're not doing well and I don't know what to do." I was quiet for a long time, my stomach in knots. Part of me wanted to help. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Maybe Nathan had finally realized what I had done for him. Maybe he finally understood. But I knew better. I had been down that road too many times before. "Where were you when I needed you?" I asked, my voice calm but cold. "Where were you when I was recovering, when I was alone in that apartment? When I had no one?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear Nathan's guilt hanging in the air. "I'm sorry, Cam. I really am. But I can't fix what's been done. I don't know what to do anymore. Please, I need you." I closed my eyes and leaned back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. It was always the same. They needed something, and now I was supposed to be the one to save them. It didn't matter that I had given up so much already. It didn't matter that they had never acknowledged my sacrifice. They were asking for more, and I had nothing left to give. "I can't help you," I said, my voice firm. "I've made my decision. You need to figure this out on your own." I hung up before Nathan could respond, before he could try to manipulate me into feeling guilty. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there alone in my apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside. I had done it. I had finally cut the cord. But the anger, the pain, it didn't go away. It lingered, gnawing at me, because as much as I hated what they had done to me, I hated what I had allowed to happen even more. I had let them treat me like this for so long. I had let them take and take without ever asking for anything in return. But now I was done. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city below. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the skyline. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. It was hard-earned, but it was mine. I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore. I wasn't going to be the person who always cleaned up their mess. I was going to live my life for me now. And if they never understood that, if they never saw what I had done for them, that was on them. Not me. The phone didn't ring again after that. The silence was heavy, but it was mine. And for the first time, I was okay with it. Months passed without a word from my family. The silence was both a relief and a weight. I had made my decision, and I had to live with it. But there were moments when the guilt crept in. I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I should have given them another chance. But every time that thought crossed my mind, I reminded myself of the years of neglect, the years of never being seen. I reminded myself of the way they had treated me, even after I gave them everything. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part of me, the part that still hoped for some sort of closure, picked it up. It was the transplant coordinator from the hospital. My stomach sank as she introduced herself. "Mr. Cameron, I'm calling to update you on Nathan's condition. He's been admitted to the emergency room due to acute kidney rejection." I felt the air leave my lungs, but I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. "He's stable for now," she continued. "But he'll need immediate intervention to save the kidney. We've been trying to reach his family, and we have him listed under your emergency contact. We wanted to inform you of the situation." I felt a cold numbness wash over me. The kidney I had given him, the one I had sacrificed so much for, was failing. And he hadn't taken care of it. My heart felt heavy, but a part of me couldn't help but feel a little vindicated. This was what I had warned him about. This was what happened when you didn't take responsibility for the choices you made. I thanked the coordinator and hung up the phone, feeling like I had just received news of someone else's life. Nathan was in trouble, but he had created this situation, he had made these choices. And now he was paying the price. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the call. Part of me wanted to rush to the hospital and fix things. To go back to being the person who always helped. The person who always tried to make things right. But I knew I couldn't. I knew I couldn't keep being that person. The one who fixed everything for everyone else, while nobody ever fixed anything for me. The next morning, I got another call. This time, it was Nathan, calling from the hospital. His voice sounded weak, distant, as if he was barely holding on. "Cameron," he said, his voice breaking. "I know I screwed up. I never thanked you. I never took care of the kidney you gave me, and now I'm in trouble. I need help." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You're asking me for help now?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. "After everything." He didn't answer right away. I could hear the guilt in his silence. "I didn't know what to do," he said finally. "I was trying to figure it out, but I messed up. Please, Cameron. I'm sorry. I know I've been a screw up, but I need you. I can't do this on my own." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. I wanted to say something comforting, to tell him that everything would be okay. But the truth was, it wouldn't be. This was the reality of his choices, and I wasn't going to fix it for him. I had given him everything I could. I had given him a piece of myself, and he hadn't even bothered to take care of it. "I'm sorry, Nathan," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I can't help you. You have to figure this out on your own. I'm not going to be your backup anymore." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the weight of his regret pressing down on him. "I understand," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, I really am." And just like that, the call ended. I stared at my phone, feeling like I had just closed a door I had kept open for far too long. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It felt like freedom. Days passed, and I didn't hear from Nathan again. I heard through the grapevine that he was in the ICU, that his kidney had failed. There were rumors about him being on dialysis and struggling to get by. I didn't reach out. I didn't feel like it was my responsibility anymore. The decision had been made. I had done everything I could, and I wasn't going to do more. Then, a week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, the return address unfamiliar. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I tore it open. The letter was from Nathan. The first few lines were filled with apologies. He talked about how he finally understood what I had done for him, how he had taken everything for granted. He wrote about the toll his actions had taken on his life, how the dialysis had given him time to think about the mistakes he had made. But it was the last paragraph that stuck with me. "I know you don't owe me anything," he wrote. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I get it now. I understand why you said no, and I'm sorry I didn't understand it sooner. You were right. I never thanked you. Not really. So, thank you. Not because I want something from you, but because you deserve to hear it. Thank you for giving me a chance at life, even though I wasted it. I hope I do better with the next one." I read the letter 3 times, the words sinking in deeper each time. Part of me wanted to forgive him. Wanted to believe that this was the moment he finally understood. But another part of me knew that it was too late for reconciliation. The damage had been done, and I couldn't go back. I wrote him back, short and to the point. I forgive you. Not because you ask, but because I'm tired of carrying it around. I hope you figure your life out. I hope you take better care of the next kidney. But most of all, I hope you understand that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I'm done being your family's backup plan. Good luck with everything. I mailed a letter and didn't expect a response. I didn't want one. Life moved on. I kept building my life without them. A month later, I got married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends from work, people who had always supported me, people who had seen me for who I was. There was no one from my biological family there. No one was invited. I had moved on finally, and I didn't look back.